Hello and welcome to Wisdom of the Mystics. We are here today to share, to reveal, to unfold, and to learn more about a very, very powerful woman, I believe, who is a mystic, who's been hidden from my consciousness, a way out of my kind of eye line and sight line. And our guest today is going to be presenting this wonderful individual to us here on Wisdom of the Mystics. And I'm just so grateful to be here from the UK with Reverend Kathy Mastroiannini, who's in New Mexico. And, please excuse any lagging that might be going on online here. We know that the connection is perfect as the three of us join here today to share with you about our mystic today, who's being presented by the none other than Dr. Tracy Brown. Welcome to New Thought Media Network and welcome to Wisdom of the Mystics. Hi, Reverend Kathy, how are you?
I'm doing great, Laura, as I'm here actually in Mexico, practicing my Espanol. It's been a joy, and I'm so grateful for technology. We're across lots of different ponds as we come here today to this. I'm really excited about this show with Dr. Tracy and to learn, as you were saying, about Sarah Flowers, this mystic. And so it's my honor to introduce Dr. Tracy. I had the joy and honor of working with her when I was at home office and when she was president of the CSL Leadership Council there. And so she would come down to the archives a lot to go looking through our boxes and look at archival wisdom. And so she truly loves history. And so she has touched my heart in many ways. And she is guided by spirit, groomed to serve, glazed in the fire of business, generous with her time and talents, grown through prayer. This is Tracy Brown. Since 1986, when Dr. Tracy was introduced to New Thought by Dr. Donald Curtis, she has used universal spiritual principles to infuse her life with peace and joy. She's a former chair of the International Centers for Spiritual Living Leadership Council, as I mentioned, a recipient of the Ernest Holmes Award. And I was there when she received that, and it was just so well-deserved. She was recently selected to receive an honorary doctorate degree. In Dallas, Texas, Dr. Tracy is actively involved as a teacher and leader at CSL Dallas, and she is a popular speaker and retreat leader throughout the New Thought movement. Her books include Stained Glass Spirit, Becoming a Spiritual Community When Oneness Does Not Require Sameness, and I Turn to Prayer. So it's a joy and honor to welcome Dr. Tracy Brown as she presents the mystic Sarah Flowers.
Hey, yeah, I'm so glad to be here. And you have no idea how excited I am to be able to share information about someone who is not as widely known as some of the mystics we talk about and some of the mystics you all have already introduced. So thank you for the invitation.
You're very welcome. And we're the ones who are blessed.
Thank you for saying yes.
Yeah. And I remember, I think it was a couple of years ago, you asked about Sarah Flowers. And so I was able to look through the Science of Mind archives, and I found an article in Science of Mind magazine in 1951, but it looks like you have found a lot more. So I'm really grateful for you to share. And to start off, we'd love to know who Sarah Flowers is as a person. What is she like as a person?
So I wish I knew more than I know, but let me share what I know about her as a person. So first and foremost, she completed the professional training, the Institute of Religious Science, in 1937. And she did live in Los Angeles. And so, of course, that made it easy to go through the training. And she immediately after that began to arrange her life so that she could live and make a living as a full-time practitioner and teacher of religious science. And so she lived in Los Angeles. She self-published her books. She had, just like Ernest Holmes, a weekly radio program. And she taught, she saw clients as a practitioner. She saw clients, and she was apparently very well known as a teacher of what we know today as science of mind.
Nice.
Well, she was from Los Angeles. She was born in Los Angeles.
I don't know if she was born in Los Angeles, but I know as an adult, or from 1930s through the 50s. And I don't know her date of death. I haven't been able to find that either. But knowing that she graduated, that's documented in 1937. And then because she was an avid publisher, writer, and publisher, the books that we've been able to find and locate, give us a little bit of a timeline and a little bit of being able to see how she even progressed in the study and the teaching of metaphysical points. And as we go through this conversation and I'm, sharing like different examples, then it does indicate her own growth and how deep she was. But I think of her definitely as a metaphysician and a mystic because of two things. One, when we define mystic, a lot of times people have this idea that, a mystic is someone who just goes woo-woo through the world and can't relate to everyday things. But that's not how I define a mystic. That's not how Ernest Holmes defined a mystic either. I define a mystic as someone who is living, embodying the principles and living universal principles and living and teaching them from a place of personal knowing, not just quoting a book, not just saying this is what it should be, but the insights they have and the way they teach touches people in such a way that it is not just kind of the normal, let me tell you, I read this and let me tell you what it says. It touches their experience, and their experience touches everyone else. Ernest Holmes talks about, I was just reading the section in the general summary of the Science of Mind textbook over the weekend, and the section where he talks about what is a mystic was very similar. It was someone who embodies and who knows this universal spiritual truth and doesn't always know how they know it. So in that sense.
So would you say that And I like what you said earlier about her unfolding, that she was unfolding this embodied experience that that she was then teaching out into the world through her books and through her radio show. And what would you say was her main teaching? What was the slant? What was her kind of edge? What was the thing that she was really sharing in the world, in her community?
I am pausing for just a minute to see if I can.
That's fine.
Put my hands on a particular thing that she wrote. Two things. Number one, in the introduction to the book Atomic Metaphysics, The Electrical Principle of Man, she wrote, the real purpose of this book is to give you an understanding of atomic energy recently released for our uses. Atomic energy has always been here, yet until it was strikingly called to our attention, we knew or cared little about it. And so what that reminds me of in the things that I have read from Sarah Flowers is that she constantly goes back to a couple of things. One, there's one source of life, and there are an infinite number of ways that it expresses. She constantly goes back to everything in these spiritual laws is available to us, as it's up to us to understand how it works, and then to apply it. So in her book, Common Sense, which was her first book, what she does is she takes the full title is Common Sense and its application in everyday life. And I think that's what she would say her main focus was. How do you not only know it, understand it, but then apply spiritual principle, universal laws in your everyday life? And as a result of that, all of her writing that I have seen listed or that I have been able to read does go back to, like, even with atomic metaphysics. I mean, this book is quantum physics before we had that name. It is a quantum physics book. It is an explanation of quantum physics written in the 1940s by a woman who was not a scientist. She was not a chemist or a physicist or any of that. She was talking about it from a spiritual perspective because she so deeply understood how spirit creates and how it works. So I don't even know.
So I just would love to just add this in for Reverend Kathy ask her question, just to add in here. I love the title of this, Common Sense. It's as if she's talking about, the one sense, the greater knowing God, and how it's common to everybody, and yet we don't always know it. I have that expression in my mind. Common sense isn't always that common. Yeah.
Well,
I
have mentioned some little pieces, but I do want to show a picture of her and add another element to this conversation. So I told you that Sarah Flowers graduated from the professional training program in 1937, and between 1937 and the mid 1950s was a very, very active writer, author, radio show host, etc. The one thing, and that really is who she is, but the one thing that I haven't mentioned is that Sarah Flowers is an African American woman. And so often in our study of science of mind or unity or divine science or anything in new thought, any of the areas in new thought, we don't get to see very often images or recognize that there were people of color, Black people and other people of color, who were instrumental in living and sharing and teaching these principles. And so I became fascinated with her because I was researching, as some of you know, just focus. Like I am researching, trying to get as many breadcrumbs as possible about the contribution and the involvement of people who are Black in new thought. And so it's hard to find images of her. And until I found one of the classic books that had a photo, it was impossible to know what she looked like. And that is another picture of her writing. And some of the selected works that she has done, the ones, this is almost all that I have seen: Common Sense and its Application in Everyday Life, the Metaphysical Thesaurus and Metaphysical Dictionary, Atomic Metaphysics, which I mentioned. She did a booklet on prana and what that means in terms of health. One of her teachers who was teaching science of mind was an actor who was originally from India. And so there was a focus on prana even then in the 1930s. She also developed a one-year home study course that you got a lesson by mail every week. And those of us who have studied New Thought and even self-help from the late 1800s to the mid 1900s, that home study course idea was very common, whether it was by mail or whether it was you would receive a recording, a 78 vinyl recording to play once a week. But she developed her own one year home study course and took a lot of the lessons from the Common Sense book and put them into this course. She also developed a practitioner and teachers training that was approved and used. And then I mentioned V thoughts or victory thoughts. So we can talk about these more, but these are just some images of Common Sense. Obviously, it's a very old and very used book. The Metaphysical Thesaurus, there are 2 different editions of this thesaurus, plus the ones that you can find now that people have just made copies of and put their own covers on, but this is one of the original versions. Atomic Metaphysics, and should I pay for metaphysical treatment? The answer is yes. I love this little booklet and have used it myself when people are like, well, shouldn't you just be doing this coaching? Because it's religious, it's spiritual. Why are we paying for it? This little booklet has lots of answers around that. And then the last snapshot is the 10 modules that she put into her training for practitioners or people who would be teaching religious science in general and New Thought as well. So, wow, that gives us a lot of places to go. And she had a weekly radio show, which if anyone ever comes across recordings of it, please let me know, because I haven't been able to find any recordings of the show, or I've seen things that confirm there was a show, but I don't even have for sure what the name of the show was.
So would she
So
have? And I'm
anything
just
you
gonna.
have.
So
Oh,
Laura,
Reverend Kathy, you're here, and you're frozen on the screen, on my screen. So I thought you weren't actually present, and you're here. Wonderful.
That happens. Yes, we'll see.
Yeah.
We affirm and know. Good. So I have some new researchers at the Science of Mind archives, and so feel free to email me any of your questions about her radio show and stuff. And I have a feeling we can find it now. So would love to help out.
yes, we will do that. And for people who are listening or watching, live or the recording, I have thought, if I lived in Los Angeles, that I might be able to go to a library or something and find more information. And so anyone who watches this recording and lives in the Los Angeles area, do some research and then share with us what you find, because I'm sure there will be newspaper articles from the 40s and 50s especially, that we just haven't revealed yet. Keyword yet.
Right. Yes.
So Laura, you were about to ask a question or make a comment, I think.
I wondered if Reverend Kathy had a question.
I think I asked it. So thank you.
Okay, so let me talk about common sense.
Yes.
So this was her first book, and the original publication date was 1941, I think. Yes, 1941. And one of the things that she did here that I thought was so amazing was that she organized the content in sections. So what do you need to know to apply spiritual principle to business? What do you need to know to apply spiritual principle to the way that you think and your mindset? What do you need to know to apply spiritual principle in things related to family? She even has a full section on mystic, which I'm going to turn to in a minute, sociology, the practical, and a large section on health. And for every topic within that, what she did was she started with a basic principle or stating a problem. And then she said, here is the metaphysical how to approach that. Then she did what she called a word power statement. We would say an affirmation. And then she listed a Bible quote from scripture. And then depending on the topic, she might go into additional things like specific problems or specific laws. And it's just really very practical, because remember, the title was Common Sense and and its application in everyday life. So you can open to random pages, or you can look in the contents for something that's happening in your life and go to it for a practical application of spiritual principle.
And I'd just like to share, I'm feeling it feels to me as if she was a very active practitioner, and that she was relaying her clients kind of what they were seeking for in demonstration. She was taking that and placing that into sections of, well, if you have this problem in your life, then this way that I've found this works. And I'm just kind of, my mind's going back to kind of Louise Hay, because that's how her book's written out. You know, when I have a client, this is what I do. And I love that. It feels so authentic.
Yeah, I just
like really bringing the practitioner into life here through the book.
Exactly. And that's how she lived. I mean, everything I've seen says this is how she lived. And every day, that's what she was focusing on. How do you apply this? So I just opened to a random page. It's not one of I have some pages marked, but this isn't one of them. I just opened to a random page. And at the top, it says this is about kidney and liver. So this is in the health section, which is a big section at the back of the book. And the principle is the healing power is flowing. Rule number 1, discover your identity. Rule number 2, you are the center of cosmic life. Rule number 3, affirm often the flow of spirit. And then she does the metaphysical how, which is really a lot of what you would pray for. It would be the spiritual mind treatment or the affirmative prayer. And her affirmation is, there is but one power in the universe, and that is good. This healing power blesses me now. This treatment benefits me spiritually and mentally, and I am rejoicing in the thought of perfect health. Bam.
Bam. Nice. Very clear and very succinct.
And every page of this book does that.
That's wonderful. She reminds me of Florence Scovel Shinn too, because the way she speaks her word definitely, like Ernest did too. I mean, she's so clear. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just like, we're just going to go straight to the demonstration, and we're just knowing it with such certainty and clarity. I just was, when I was reading the article from 1951, it would, again, I mean, it'd be just like a phrase. I mean, she would speak this phrase so powerfully that there was demonstration. And it's just, what a powerful metaphysician.
No room for doubt.
Right.
Yes. You
know, one of the phrases that I use a lot that came to and through me when I was preparing for a talk, I don't know, maybe about 8 years ago, and it just stuck with me. And so, you know, maybe 100 years from now, somebody will be saying, and Tracy Brown said, no doubt, no drama.
Oh, nice.
Just demonstration. No doubt, no drama, just demonstration. And when I read Sarah Flowers' writing, it's like that's how she lived her life. That's how she wrote, that there can be no doubt. There's no need to create any drama around it. There's just going to be demonstration. Look for it, accept it. Like, why are you wasting my time? There's only demonstration.
Right.
And that, so for me, that's.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go, Reverend Kathy.
I was just, why don't you go first? I think and then I'll follow up.
Okay. So for me, this is a true mystic, you know, somebody that is not going to accept anything other than truth. And that's it. It's done. We're not going to talk about it. We're not going to debate it. We're not going to pick it to bits anymore. It's done. For me, that's so Emma Curtis Hopkins.
Yes.
It's like,
very
yes,
much like Emma. Yes.
Yeah.
When I think about the sequencing, so Common Sense was her first book, and that makes sense because she'd been through all the training. She now, at that point, had been seeing clients for 5 years, you know, so along the way, I think exactly what you said, that she was probably tracking what people were requesting treatment for. And as she was studying and preparing, she was organizing, like this matches with this, and this principle needs to be applied here. And so after that first book, then she was able to see what questions people still had or what they didn't understand. And that resulted in her writing the Metaphysical Thesaurus, and the Metaphysical Thesaurus of positive and negative words. And here's what she writes in the foreword. I'm going to excerpt 3 things. She starts the foreword by saying, "This book is an outgrowth of many years of experience in trying to explain metaphysical teachings and movements to the thousands who have come to me for advice and guidance in proper living. During my teaching, I have found that many earnest souls have been more or less mystified by the words they have met in books on metaphysics, and have therefore missed the real thoughts behind the words of the writers of such books." Skipping down, for example, take the word metaphysics. Here we find confusion in the mind of the ordinary reader because the word is not at all clear to the average individual. But to me, it is the only word which conveys the meaning of this particular branch of spiritual science. The prefix meta means beyond, or a passing from one state to the other. Physics, in its broadest sense, means material or physical. Hence, metaphysics means beyond the material. So she takes this and she's like, okay, you may not get it. Let me break it down for you without making you feel stupid or dumb. Right?
Right.
And
Yes.
then the book does, again, group things together, and she has the positive interpretation, the negative interpretation in sections, but there is an alphabetical index at the back if you're looking for a specific word so that you can find it. So my question for the two of you, what's a word you would like a metaphysical interpretation of? And let's see what Sarah Flowers had to say about it.
Ah, okay. Are you there, Reverend Kathy? I
Yep,
have a
I'm
word.
here. Go for it. You start with your word.
Cosmic.
Oh, I don't know if that word was even used in 1930.
Oh, maybe not.
Let's see.
No.
Well, cosmic consciousness.
Wow.
Would you, right?
Yeah.
There's cosmic consciousness and there's the cosmos. But the way you used it, I think you're probably leaning more toward cosmic consciousness.
Cosmic consciousness. Yes.
So let's see, number 27, cosmic consciousness, an awareness of the unity of the cosmos, the oneness of all, the living universe, immortality.
Yeah.
Wow.
And she also says, let's see what it says there. Cosmic consciousness, the consciousness. Okay, so the first one was in the section under treatment. The second place she provided a definition was in a section where you're trying to understand deities. So the consciousness of a greater grandeur, the consciousness of a fuller life. Metaphysicians claim this consciousness or awareness will develop and manifest itself more fully by the race in times to come, by humanity in times to come. Many recognize its development now, cosmic consciousness. All right, Reverend Kathy.
Oh,
Peace. Does she have peace in there?
Of course. I don't know, but of course she will
I
have
know,
peace
right?
in here. Peace, peace, peace. There's peace and friendship, and there's peace of mind. There are two definitions for peace. The first one that she gives peace. Ooh.
Noise.
Freedom from internal commotion, a state of tranquility of the mind, a quiet mind, a mind free from disturbing emotions such as fear, terror, anxiety, jealousy, etc. A mind in a passive receptive state. Great peace have they that love thy law. So from Psalms. And her other place where she goes directly to peace is also in this section on treatment. And it is, I have the wrong number. Peace, 68 and 85. Oh, she uses it in the definition of silence. So the first one I read was actually her definition of peace in the thesaurus.
Right. Oh, nice. Cool. Thank you. That was beautiful. Oh my gosh. Very powerful. Yeah. And our friend Roxanne said, peace gave me goosebumps. So one of our listeners, yes.
Yeah, there's so many. A lot of times now when I am preparing a talk or a class, a webinar, but I want to define words, often I will remember to go and see just how did Sarah Flowers word it, because she was so deeply grounded and centered. And sometimes I'll resonate with the way she wrote it, even though she's not really saying something different. But so many of our definitions come from men. Yeah. And sometimes there's just a slight little shift in the energetic of the words that she uses that, I'll go, oh, I just love the way that is phrased. And that too is, mysticism. The mystics are not bound by gender roles or stereotypes, but also a mystic. When I think of people today who are living mystics, still their experience and their life does influence the words they use and how they use them and the examples they use.
Yes.
So, when I read Hafez and I think, well, yeah, so much describes the time in which he lived. And so that also affects her definitions as well.
So it feels to me that she was a born researcher, because the books have this content that it feels like she's been really questioning and piecing things together in really profound ways to create her, she's a content creator and she's piecing in unusual ways for people to be able to receive it, to use it for their own lives in a really practical way. And I wonder what her back history was. Like, did she go to university? Was she, how highly educated was she, or not? I mean, I'm just really interested what what kind of do you know what may have led her into this teaching?
I have
what kind of lifestyle she had?
Absolutely no idea, which I kind of like, because then it keeps me from making up a story, because I believe, and I want to believe, that every one of us, every human being born, actually has the seed within to live as a mystic. And that many of our mystics, their understanding of spiritual truth has nothing to do with their education or their family. I mean, it all contributed to their life, but the seed that is there, that spirit and spiritual law defines how I see the world. It's like, I kind of don't want to know. The human part of my brain would love to know. I'd love to know if she was married, if she had kids, if she, right? I'd love to know about her, but I'm also really glad that up until this point, I don't know anything about, I know where she lived in Los Angeles because she self-published her books. And so her home address, is in the books as the source or the place.
Wow.
Oh, that's helpful.
Right. So I know that, and I know what part of LA that is in, and I can kind of imagine what that was, what that community might have been like in the 40s and 50s. But even that doesn't, say much.
Define.
But I do have to agree with you, Laura, that she, for whatever reason, I don't know if it showed up in the way she did treatments and practitioner sessions, but there was a part of her that was captivated by the past, because in the thesaurus, not only did she do the thesaurus, but at the very back, there is a section called The Chronological History of the Metaphysical Movement.
Oh my goodness.
The chronological history of the metaphysical movement. Wow. And she goes chronologically, beginning about 1000 BC. Okay, are you listening, Kathy?
You betcha, I am.
She starts with Shervakis or Lokayaticus about 1000 BC, a cult which held that the individual perished at the death of the body, there being no such thing as a soul. And then she goes to Vedanta and begins to track how we moved through Zoroastrianism and Hinduism and Buddhism and all of these different philosophers or philosophies to build what we believe and describe as metaphysics. And so she gives here's a key thought from this philosopher or this philosophy, all the way up through Emerson, Abdu'l-Baha, von Hartmann, George Bernard Shaw or Bernard Shaw, Christian Science, Unity, and all the way up through, she's got Divine Science in there, New Thought, Modern New Thought, and all the way up to the Institute of Mental Physics in 1937, founded by Edwin Dingle.
Wow. I think that
so is Ernest Holmes?
Yes, because she was trained in religious science. So Divine Science is there, which of course,
yes,
both Fenwick and Ernest Holmes were ordained divine science ministers. But Institute of Religious Science in 1926, founded by Ernest Holmes.
She's got that in there.
Good.
Right. So that's in there. In fact, she has the largest part in this series, because mostly she just gives I'm looking at them, 3 or 4 lines with a highlight from them and maybe what was a key contribution. But with Institute of Religious Science, it's more like 20 or 24 lines, and New Thought, Rosicrucianism. It's
Wow. It
amazing.
looks amazing.
I want that book. I'm
I
going to
know.
order that book. I want it as a book, not a Kindle, like a real book.
Well, the image that you captured, that you have, where the Metaphysical Thesaurus and Metaphysical Dictionary, because it is in public domain, there are a number of publishers who basically have taken an original copy and, taken snapshots and put it into the book. But I had one of those for probably 5 years before I found an original edition and a second edition, which has a different color cover, back from the 1940s. And so pretty much I keep them in plastic or, wrapped up to preserve them, and then use, that more recent kind of version as a week by week reference. So
yeah. It's amazing. Do you think that she studied with Ernest Holmes? Do you think that he was influential with her learning, her studying personally? Oh, Jason's sneezing.
So I don't have a projection about that. What I know, and Kathy, Reverend Kathy, you might have a better idea of how many people were teaching the professional course in 1935, 36, 37. That's when she was, going through the professional level training, which means that she had some training probably before that. And she lived really close to the Institute. So it's hard for me to imagine that she did not personally interact with Ernest Holmes, but she doesn't write. I haven't read anything where she writes that. And so it's just projection. And in 1936, 1937, keeping in mind that, the textbook was about to be updated.
It's true.
And there were teachers who had been, because they had trained a lot of teachers, right? So it's all a guess. And the other part of me that says, well, maybe there were other teachers and, she never had a class directly with him. That's the first 10 years of the movement and the Institute. So he had to be around every day, just walking the halls or popping into classes. It was nothing like we see of the movement now with 250,000 people all over the globe. So.
No, I agree. And I was thinking that too, 10 years into the movement, and how active Ernest was back then. I love everything you just said. I think that makes a lot of sense, that she ran into him. But again, with that, that's very helpful, as I can do some more research on my end, as we have the minutes, that go back to the beginning of the movement. And, and again, I love that you were saying where she is in Los Angeles. I'm certain we can find more information.
I never thought about it when I was at the archives, but yeah, how, as you said, I used to come in and I would just read the minutes from the board meeting to see what they were talking about then. And, laughing at, oh, we're still talking about that now. But in every month, every month there would be, here are the people that we're graduating.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
Here are the people that were. So it would be interesting to go back to 1937
Mhm.
and find what class or group she was in, which also might give some idea about who else was, who else was teaching at that time. Um, so
Because I know Christian D. Larson actually taught back then with the Institute. And so that's kind of it was Dr. Ken Kaiser asked for an original, like the curriculum from way back when. And we found Christian D. Larson on there as one of the teachers. And that was fascinating. And then the other thought is in the back of Science of Mind magazine, it lists all the active practitioners. And so we could go back in the magazine and see who she was with and try to follow her practitioner path. So that could be fun too.
So I know that we're winding down in time, but in Atomic Metaphysics, she actually did a little bio that I didn't want to start with, but it may be a good place to end as a summary.
Nice.
Writer, publisher, metaphysician, and teacher of the science of mind, or the science of metaphysics. 10 years ago, Sarah Flowers began her studies with Lal Chand Mehra. Then she took the major course at the Institute of Religious Science in Los Angeles in 1937. And in 1941, she wrote her first book, Common Sense. Since that time, she has made many friends and is internationally known. Sarah Flowers is a keen, intuitive thinker and can write a book in less than a month. When asked where she acquires her information, her answer is from life. Her important work is teaching practitioners metaphysical treatment for all of the problems that confront us today. Sarah Flowers gave a radio program in which she played the piano and recited the poem Mind. Her lectures are strengthening and unique. In them, she stresses common sense in everyday life. And that, my friends, is the amazing Sarah Flowers.
Oh, what a treasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
What a treasure. What a treat. I'm so intrigued by her and what she's done and how she has it's like she's like a top secret agent. She needs exposing more fully. She's incredible. And that she saw thousands and thousands of people, and the word international in there must mean that she was really attracting all sorts of interest from around the world at that time. Amazing.
It's amazing. And just to let you know, the Science of Mind Archives, we have a new program called Past Perfect. And our new archivist, Kim Larmy, is putting together bios of all these folks. So we would absolutely love this information so we can have Sarah Flowers listed in our Past Perfect when people are doing people searches. And how wonderful will that be? So blessings for all your research and all you do for our history and to share it.
Yes.
I was curious. I know, like you're saying, we're winding down here a little bit. A couple things is how did this influence you and your practitioner, like your spiritual? How has learning about Sarah influenced you, like in a practical way?
Oh, that's so easy. And because she absolutely has. Sometimes we don't know we're looking for validation. And being a Black woman who has been living these principles for more than 3 decades and, going through so many classes and never seeing a Black woman be held up as an example or someone who was teaching or doing the things. Learning about her gave me a validation I didn't even know I needed. That she did these things in the 1930s and nobody knew about it, but she, like me, was focused on how do you apply these principles and how do I help others apply these principles in their lives. And I don't care about the fame. I don't care about, right? It's like I'm not doing it for any of that. And then to find her and find that she was doing this in the 1930s and 40s, it's like, yes, yes, yes. So that's the biggest way. And then as I began to acquire her writing and would read it, it was, even further validation of how brilliant she was, yet she's completely unknown and not included in what we teach, like the people we teach about. And so she and Mother Pearl both are the two that set me off on the journey of if it's true for them, then there got to be dozens, if not hundreds, of other people of African descent. And and I want to learn about as many of them as I can and share about them, because not just Black folks, but everybody needs to understand that we have always been multi-ethnic and multicultural. Her first teacher was the actor who was born in India, who was a professional actor in Los Angeles, who became a teacher. And, I had never heard his name either related to religious science.
Wow. What was the name again? I know you mentioned it.
It is Lal, L-A-L, Chand, C-H-A-N-D, Mehra, M-E-H-R-A. And if you look him up, his acting comes up, like as an actor and the kind of roles that he played. But the connection within science of mind, like, we don't teach it. We don't know his name from that perspective. So, I don't, it's like there's no anger about that. It's just like, oh, it opens up a whole new perspective.
Absolutely.
And I'm just feeling grateful you have brought Sarah here, or Sarah brought herself here through you today, and that there is a deeper conversation to be had about how, as an organization, as a spiritual community, we can really bring, research these people and bring them to life and animate them and teach their way and their teaching way, and bring that into the way that that practitioners can practitioner and ministers can minister. I think it's so important to really highlight now and do this. I'm excited by this. I'm going to be sending this, or telling Dr. Toni LaMarta from the Florida campus, but she taught me history of New Thought, and wouldn't that be wonderful if Sarah Flowers would be taught on the in the ministerial education?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah. Just slide her on in there. Yeah.
Nice. And how can people learn more about you, Dr. Tracy, if they wanted to learn more about these wonderful, your history and what you're sharing with the world? Your legacy and what you're giving to the whole world.
Well, the easiest way, if someone wants to learn more about Tracy Brown, the practitioner, and the spiritual aspect, it is to go to reclaimjoy.com, reclaimjoy.com. And there are links there to other pieces of the work and other things I'm doing, but that's probably home base. Or email me at tracy@reclaimjoy.com if you have specific questions about Sarah Flowers or about anything metaphysics.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for being here, Dr. Tracy. And of course, you are absolutely involved and woven into the Science of Mind conversation series that happens every Saturday. And you can find Dr. Tracy Brown here teaching from the Science of Mind textbook, or sharing her wisdom and knowledge on the Science of Mind textbook on Saturdays here. Not every Saturday, but she's, you know, with a group of us that are doing this. So I know those programs are invaluable to learn more and to understand the work of Ernest Holmes. So thank you for doing this, Dr. Tracy, thing that you do, and for being here right now. It's such a blessing, and to learn more about Sarah. Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Thank you. And we want to thank everyone who has joined us today, either in the recording or watching it live. We're really, really grateful for you and your enthusiasm and your questions. And if you would love to support New Thought Media Network with a donation, it really supports this programming, so we can get New Thought further and further out to the world, so we can learn about these mystics and bring them to life, so we can use them in our life. So we're grateful.
And we're also so grateful for Reverend Kathy Mastroiannini for being here every other week and shining her light on wisdom of the mystics, and also and for all of the work that Reverend Kathy does for the Science of Mind archives. Go and check their website out, learn more about what the archives are doing and how you can support the archives and become a member and really lean into the work they're doing, because it's amazing work. And the Ernest Holmes is really, the light of Ernest Holmes is being shone and radiated there through the archives, so that we can keep this teaching in our hearts and minds. And the archives is, you can spend hours on the archives website. Definitely. Thank you to everybody for being here today. And anything else, Reverend, you'd like to add before we go today?
I think we're good. We'll see everyone at the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month here at New Thought Media Network or Science Mind Archives Facebook page. And we just look forward to seeing you soon. Have a blessed and wonderful couple of weeks. And again, great gratitude to Dr. Tracy and to Sarah Flowers for joining us today. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. Bye for now. I'm going to
Bye.
find the correct video. There we go. Bye.